Hey guys, how's it going? It's Janie over here at Janie Sweets. Welcome back to my channel. In this episode, I'm coming at you with a tutorial on how I made this really beautiful wedding cake. It was an all-white cake decorated with gold leaf as well as some beautiful sugar flowers. So if you want to learn how I did this, keep on watching. Now, I know a lot of you guys struggle with making cakes in the summer, especially for something like a wedding where it has to sit out the entire ceremony plus the entire reception before you get to cut it. So what do you do when someone asks you to make a cake for them that's going to be sitting outdoors in the dead of summer? You obviously don't want the decorations or the cake to melt all over the place, but at the same time, for something like a wedding, you do also want it to be edible because you want to have that famous, cake cutting ceremony that everybody loves to have pictures of. So here it is, the best kept secret in the industry, Styrofoam board, guys. Now the styrofoam is great because it is not going to melt in the heat. However, it looks like a real cake. So once it's decorated, no one actually knows that there's not cake inside. They come in all shapes and sizes. Some people call them dummy cakes. You can look for them on Amazon or really anywhere on the internet. I will link the particular one that I use down below. Now what I'm going to do is make that famous cut. So I'm just going to use a marker to mark where the top tier is going to end, and this is the very bottom tier. This is a 12-inch. So I'm just using a serrated knife to make an incision where I'm going to place the actual cake. When you cut into the styrofoam, the inside of it is pretty grainy, so just do your best to remove as many grains as you possibly can. And then I'm using candy melt. Some people use a piece of fondant, but candy melt is super easy for me to just melt and use to just, cover the entire inside, if that makes sense. So you don't want the pieces of styrofoam all over the cake that, the bride and groom are going to cut. That's why you're going to seal it with the candy melt. You could also use royal icing, to be honest. So once it dried out, I'm going to place the cake. Now, no, your eyes are not playing tricks on you. I did make the hole bigger off camera. I just thought that it didn't look quite big enough. So I'm just using a regular pound cake or yellow cake, whatever you want to use to just stuff inside. It doesn't really need to be pretty because all the bride and groom are going to do is actually feed each other the cake by hand, so it doesn't have to be like a perfect beautiful slice. So just do your best to stuff the cake in there. Just cut pieces and then attach it with ganache. I'm using chocolate ganache because it will set firmer than buttercream will, and remember, this cake is going to be sitting outside for a very long time, so I don't want it to start warping and look all kind of funky and weird. So just use your ganache and go ahead and layer the pieces of cake until you reach the top. Was done, I'm going to use my serrated knife and then just kind of cut the outside so that it will be flush to the styrofoam, so it's like a smooth what's the word I'm looking for? Finish? I don't know. But anyway, cover it with your chocolate ganache and then set it in the refrigerator for at least 20 minutes because you do want it to be super firm before you go in fondant the entire thing. While this is in the refrigerator setting, I'm going to show you how I'm going to cover all of the top tiers and fondant. Now with a styrofoam board, where I see that the fondant tends to rip is right at the top because it is a very sharp edge. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that, first of all, my fondant is kneaded thoroughly, but I also cover the entire thing with vegetable shortening. So the more vegetable shortening that there is, the more it's going to stick. You could actually also use gum glue if you want, but if you want to be able to just rip it off and use the styrofoam again, then vegetable shortening is the way to go. So just go ahead and roll out your fondant. You don't want it to be super thin because, again, this is just styrofoam and it will rip it. And then you want to work very fast. Make sure that you adhere the top first because this is where, like I said, it tends to rip a lot more. And then just fan out the bottom, and then you just cover it like you would any normal cake. Now I've done the same exact process for all of my tiers, and now I'm just going to put some chocolate ganache in between the tiers and then plop the top tier right on top of it. Now using a toothpick, I'm going to mark where I want my design to go. Now I'm just going to cover the fondant with my vegetable shortening. Now this vegetable shortening is used strictly for decorations, and I am going to start putting my gold leaf all over it. Now pause. This gold leaf that I am using on this cake is non-edible. It is for craft only. You cannot eat this, so please do not put it on your cakes. The reason why I'm using it is because it is cheaper than the edible gold leaf, and because this was a cake just for show, what was the point of using the real stuff? You see what I mean? So you are going to use the real gold leaf the same exact way. I'm going to link below two different kinds of gold leaves. The one that I'm using here, which is non-edible, and another one that I have used in the past and that I still continue to use on cakes that are meant to be eaten. This again is used for craft purposes only. It's just for looks. You cannot eat it. However, the real stuff looks exactly the same. It's just a lot more expensive. Like, they don't come in a big sheet like this, the real stuff. It comes in like a little tiny 1 inch squares. So you would need to use a lot to cover a cake of that size. So like I said, there was no point for me to make that purchase because no one was going to eat the cake. And also the part of the cake that is edible, like the slice that I cut off, I am not putting any gold leaf on it anyway. So just go ahead and use your vegetable shortening, and again, you would use the real stuff the same way you're using this fake gold leaf as well. Just use vegetable shortening or a little bit of water or gum glue on your cake, and then stick your gold leaf right on it. It will stick to anything that is moist, and it won't to anything that is dry. So using like your dry hands or a paintbrush, you can brush it on and it won't stick to it. So I'm going to layer on a whole bunch of sheets because I want it to look, how do you say this? Like, I want it to look thick and not so scraggly. And that was my husband that just walked into the frame. So anyway, yeah, so like I told you guys, using a dry paintbrush, I'm going to brush it on and then make sure that it is super nice and smooth. Now once I was done with my gold leaves, I'm going to start placing my flowers. I use Java flowers. I will link for you guys the specific ones that I use. I think it's like a peony set, and also like just some filler flowers. I don't remember exactly which ones I use, but I'm gonna link it for you guys below because I absolutely love how it turned out. So I'm just going to eyeball it and make it kind of cascade off of the cake. Now I'm using a pair of scissors just to like stick it on it because it isn't real cake, so it's kind of hard to stick the flowers into it. So using a pair of scissors is going to make it super easy for me. Once I was done placing all of my flowers, I'm using just some gold luster dust diluted with some vodka or Everclear or whatever clear alcohol you have, and I'm going to paint just the perimeters of the flowers and the leaves just so that it gives it a more three-dimensional look to it, and it looks like it belongs on the cake. Once I was done placing all of my flowers and painting them, this is what the cake looks like. I waited until daylight to show you guys the final result. So I really do hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. It really does help me out. Subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss out on any of my future videos. Also share this video with all your friends and families if you think this would be helpful to them. As always, my socials are at JaniesSweets. I am on Instagram as well as on Facebook. If you click on the annotation to your left, you will be directed to my last video. And that is it for this week's tutorial, guys. I love you. I'll talk to you next time.